And you're doing great work on that. Senator Hassan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for being here today. I will just add to what Senator Portman said. Enforcement deterrence on fentanyl coming into the country is obviously important. So is treatment so that we can reduce the demand in this country for opioids. So if you would take that back to your colleagues throughout the administration, we can't arrest our way out of this. We have to do everything to get out of this, and we'd love the administration's help. Secretary Duke, I wanted to just start. I have 3 areas to explore this morning. You talked about election security as critical infrastructure, and I wanted to ask you to please share with us in more detail the scope of activities that DHS has undertaken to help secure our nation's election infrastructure. What specific actions has the department taken in 2017 and 2018 to advance the mission?
And I'll have Chris come up to the table to get into more specifics, but principally we're doing assessments of the systems as requested by the state and local governments. We're also made available our SAVE system for checking rosters, but on the critical, cybersecurity side, it's principally focused around assessments. And I think you all know Chris Krebs.
Good morning, ma'am. Senior official performing the duties of the Undersecretary for NPPD.
Yep. Say that again.
Hoping to change
Faster.
that.
Yeah.
Yes. 3 principal lines of effort: information sharing, technical support, and incident response planning. On the first line with information sharing, we're working closely with the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center, the MSISAC, which has direct relationships with state and locals, to provide best practices, information on strategic and targeted risks to election infrastructure, but also providing security clearances to state and local officials.
That was going to be my next question. So you're working to ensure that state election officials have the appropriate
And we have kicked off that line of effort. Okay. We have a number of the 50 senior election officials. We're about 37 into at least getting into the interim secret
And just
level.
adding to that on clearances, while we're making progress on the longer clearances, we're giving 1-day clearances to as an interim gap.
And are you working to provide election officials with access to SCIF?
Yes, ma'am. That's as part of the relationship with the FBI. We can, we're not going to give them SCIFs, but we're going to coordinate ways that they can come into SCIFs, whether here in D.C. or in their local offices.
Okay. And are you working to ensure that state election officials are coordinating with both the state's Homeland Security advisor and the state's chief information officer?
Yes, ma'am. So as a part of every state in the learning experience over the last couple years, or last year rather, we've come to understand that there's essentially a triumvirate per state, and you've just highlighted the senior election official, the state CIO, and the Homeland Security advisor. And so each state has a bit of a different arrangement, particularly on the senior official side, but each state has we're developing separate and individual information sharing protocols per state.
Okay. I may follow up on this a little bit with Mr. Scott and Mr. Kelly about your own assessment about whether DHS is doing enough, but I want to, just because of time, move on to a couple of other issues, and then we may be able to talk some more about that. To Secretaries Duke and Grady, I'd like to touch upon an initiative being spearheaded jointly by the DHS Office of Intelligence and Analysis and DHS's Chief Information Officer. As I understand it, the DHS Data Framework Initiative is the department's effort to unify your disparate data sets under one technological architecture in order to enhance DHS's ability to identify terrorist threats in our travel system. As I understand it, our existing framework is still in its initial phase of development, but it promises to bring important capabilities to DHS analysts in their effort to try to keep out foreign fighters and those who wish to do us harm. Can you describe for us the value of the DHS Data Framework Project and the priority the department places on this initiative?
Its value is, I can't tell you how strong, and it is a top priority. The data framework is essential for moving forward against terrorism, TCOs, drugs. So what it does several things. One is a systems issue at the kind of the pipes area. The second is we're looking at better communicating between law enforcement sensitive and intelligence information, and also coordinating intelligence. Undersecretary Glaoui has a major initiative as part of this data network to really be the chief intelligence officer of the department. It's part of the overall unity of effort, and that's going to be helpful. But then also not just having intelligence, but having intelligence communicate with law enforcement at the law enforcement sensitive level, and the timeliness and the accuracy. Things are moving at lightning speed, and especially with something like a radicalization. We don't have the years of tracking a criminal anymore. We are all focused on this. It requires management from the pipe standpoint, me from a leadership, and Undersecretary Glaoui.
Well, certainly there are those of us who want to support you in the effort, and I'd look forward to working with you on that. I had one other issue, and maybe I assume we're going to get some other questions. I see it, Mr. Chair. But you've been talking about the NPPD change and wanting to put cybersecurity kind of into the title. I'm a little concerned that cybersecurity is more important than that, and I am wondering what authorities would an independent operational cybersecurity component need to retain from NPPD in order to be successful, and would any of NPPD's non-cyber functions suffer if the cybersecurity mission was pulled out and turned into an independent DHS component? And I'm over time. If you want to give a very brief answer and then work it into the rest of the discussion on this, that would be great.
I think that the cyber isn't just a name change. It does come with the authorities and the undersecretary. I do think that cyber and critical infrastructure together work well. We can talk more about that.
All right, thank you.